Welcome back to a nice talking technical, and it's so nice to share a few charts with you. And interesting, before I want to kick off, you will see that Christelle sometimes look at different indicators and she used different strategies, and it's so important to give that through, because what happens is when you are a technical analyst like myself for many years, you almost get used to a certain indicator and a certain way of thinking, and that is quite important to see someone with other techniques and other strategies. But of course, we know over the years that each and every share almost got its own, you can say, personality, and you need to adjust to that share. Sometimes with one share, it will work with a beautiful 40-week moving average, and the other time, the share will work on a 20 moving average, so you need to adjust to that. Well, let's kick off. We've got some nice requests again, and the first one is, we want to talk about NEPI Rockcastle. Robbie dropped us a tweet and he said, listen, Frans, can you maybe have a look at NEPI Rockcastle? Now, guys, if we look at the chart here, look at this chart. I mean, it almost fell off a cliff. It was around 220 Rand in 2017, in December 2017. And from there, it almost fell off a cliff. And I always call this a waterfall formation. Now, waterfall formation usually gives you this rapid bounce back. But you see what happened here? After this waterfall formation, Robbie, it almost started to consolidate. And it's still consolidating. And it's almost telling us that the share is making its mind up. Now, for me, I always use a consolidation as a place where the informed capital are saying to themselves they are happy with the price. And that's important, Robbie, to always remember that when you see a share that's consolidating, remember, when you are looking at charts, you haven't got all the fundamental detail, or you may be not a fundamental expert, and you may be new to a field, and you can only guide yourself or your thinking on the price action of the share. And it's easy to say, okay, the share is going to do this and that and the other, but the consolidation is telling you that the informed capital, the guys that's much cleverer than we are, they are the guys that say, listen, we are happy to buy the share between this 135 Rand level and 105 Rand level. And they will be in control until this resistance line. There's the resistance line. Robbie, only when it breaks above 136.29, we can see a nice move to the upside. So if you haven't got the stock, wait for 136.29. I'm not going to work on this stop loss right at the bottom unless you are a very long-term investor, and I will use then 104.89 as my stop loss. But if this 126.29 can break out to the top, we can easily see it all the way from there. Let's just show you where it can go to, and it will be from the low to the consolidation band to the band, and then from there on upwards, it can almost take NEPI Rockcastle back to 166.29. But as we know, and we always keep in mind, when a sector like the property sector at the moment is under pressure, they can remain under pressure for quite a long time. So just be careful and wait for that 126.29. Before that, just sit on your hands and just wait patiently for the share to give us a proper buying signal, because at least what I like about it, there was the low, and since then it made a higher low, a higher low, a higher low, all the way. That is positive. That is positive. And we can go even as far as this and say, well, this support line here is holding on. And look what's happening. This support line, every time it comes back there, it bounces off there. That is positive. But I would like to see this 126.29. This is this big, strong resistance level that's holding the stock back above 136.29. We can see a beautiful bounce to the upside. Well, let's have a look at Discovery. Charles asked us, and strangely enough, Robbie also asked about Discovery, but let's have a look at Discovery here. Well, first of all, you can also see that the share has been under immense pressure. Look at this. From, can you believe it, from a stock of almost close to 200 Rand, 191 Rand in February 2018, all the way down to 116 Rand 81. Interesting enough, we can say that plenty South African stocks that's listed on the local bourse has been in a massive bear market for at least 2 years. It's only a few shares that's keeping the index up, but the rest is under immense pressure. Now let's have a look at Discovery. Now, first of all, Discovery, the trend is clearly to the downside. I want to add a 40-week moving average here, because remember, this is a weekly chart. I just want to add in a 40-week moving average so that I can see if it's still below the long-term moving average. There you are. And yes, it's clearly below that. So what we see here is we can see relief bounces under this 40-week moving average. But until this 40-week moving average turn into a support, unfortunately, the momentum is down and the medium to the long term sentiment is still negative on the stock. So if I must say, Charles, if I look at this line, I'm going to draw in a line here. Just want to see if it did bounce there off there. Yes, see what I'm doing here? I'm joining all the bottom support lines, and I'm getting to a point where the stock is almost at the point of showing our first sign of strength here, and that will be above 116.81. And remember, this is a weekly chart, so we wait for a Friday close. But for me personally, I will say that I'll only be happy if Discovery can do the following. Discovery needs to go above this resistance line, and that is, let's just do it. There you are. Just draw it in there. Okay, there you are. It must get above 132.56 Rand before we can say that the first signs of this downward trend is coming into place and it can bounce off there. But for me, this 40-week moving average, I think by the time this share is getting close to this level of about 132 Rand, these two will almost meet each other up here. And then we'll have a strong buying signal. But for the moment, or for the time being, if you want to nibble, yes, you can always nibble. Yeah, that will be your first sign above 116.81. Make use of a stop loss of 102.74. And my targets to the top will be, and there you are, 123.53 Rand, 127.31, 128.36, and maybe even back to that level of 132.14. Well, let's have a look at Sibanye. Now, I can remember a few months ago when we were talking about Sibanye, nobody wanted to even look or listen and say, listen, the stock is just going to fall off a cliff. It's useless. They're going to go bankrupt. And what do we see? And I like this chart. What I liked about this chart then already was this beautiful rounding bottom. And by the way, Leon is asking about this. This beautiful rounding bottom here. And there was an inverse head and shoulder. Maybe I can just show that. That also made me positive a while back. There was the inverse head and shoulder. Just show you here. There you are. There's the left shoulder. There's the head. There's the right shoulder. It bounced off there. It came back to test this line. And look what happened. The big buying level for me, or buying signal for me, was when the stock started to let's call it, meet up with this 40-week moving average. And every time that it get there, it bounces up from there. That was positive. Look at the other time. It bounces off here. But Leon wants to know, can he buy now? Now, for me personally, I'm not a momentum. I'm not chasing momentum. I usually like to buy when a stock is almost knocked out, and then it starts to show some signs, then I'll get in. But I mean, he can chase momentum. But for me, a straight rally in about a few weeks from 16.29 to 25.18 is maybe just too good to be true. But let's have a look at the stochastic here. And I just want to show you, and that will maybe give us an idea. And remember, this is once again a weekly chart. To give you an idea, I think on the short-term chart, it's even more overbought. But look what happens here. There's your stochastic, your slow stochastic. And look what happens. It is overbought. The previous period, it went overbought, and it gave a few weeks of bounce, and then it retraced. So I will say, Leon, just wait for the retracement. Unless you are in the stock already and you maybe want to add up, then you can maybe add up on momentum. But for me, if you haven't got the stock, because it sounds like you want to buy it, I will wait for a pullback. Maybe it can pull back to this line there, that little point there, all the way down to 21.21, or even you can maybe be lucky, it pulls back all the way to this neckline that turned into a support at 16.99 Rand. So for those guys that did not follow the show for a few months, you missed out on Sibanye, because we called it here at around 8 Rand, 9 Rand. I think the last call was about 10 Rand something, and it just rallied even further. Well, let's have a look at Bright. Bright is surprising because We've heard in the news now that Mr. Wiese sold a lot of his shares the other day. I mean, I think it was 220 rands worth of shares, 220 million rands worth of shares now. Now you can just imagine that's a lot of shares that came onto the market. But somebody asked me, but Frans, is that a lot of shares? And I said to them, always remember that when you talk or you look at the director's action, remember these guys are billionaires. They've got plenty of money. So if they sell 200 million rands of shares, for them it's maybe to rebalance a portfolio, or he wants to invest the money in something else. Remember, they're just in a different league. So if you see that happens, always say to yourself, listen, it is people that's got a lot of money and they can deploy it in some other way. But what I like about the share is the following. And I would like to show you, and Peter, if you look at this, and you will immediately see what I'm showing you now, you will say, oh, Frans, there's something here. There's the spike in volume. Now, the previous time, there was always a spike in volume, also a spike in volume during June. Now, in that month during June, it bounced a little bit and come back, but now it's something different. It bounces up and it wants to go up. So, and I see higher lows, and I will say the first buy will be when this 40-week moving average starts to show strength. Then I know it can bounce, and that will be only 2067. But if you don't want to wait for that, you can maybe nibble already at 1603, make use of a stop loss of 1304, and maybe our next stop will be that 2067 40-week moving average. If that really turns out, then we can maybe go to 24 rand. And I think this action tells me that something is on the boil. But where's the clue? The clue lies with the volume. So think about it. When volume spikes, there's always action that you can wait for. Well, let's join you after a few seconds.